At the turn of the 20th century, dozens of manufacturers struggled to launch products and gain clients, fame, and fortune. One of these early companies rose to quick success, had an outsized influence on the adoption of the car, was overshadowed by other companies they inadvertently helped create, and then were gone a little more than 2 decades later, but still had a continuing influence outside of the auto world. Welcome back to All Cars, y'all. If you're new here, my name is John, and this is a far too brief history of Winton. Alexander Winton was born in 1860 in Scotland, and at the age of 19 emigrated to the US. Working first as an engineer on a steamship and then at an iron works and then as a marine engineer, he moved to Cleveland in 1884 and founded Winton Bicycle Company in 1891. While successful, he was bitten by the excitement around the automobile craze and founded Winton Motor Carriage Company in 1897 after experimenting with his own designs in his bicycle shop. His first creation was a one-cylinder with front-to-back seating in 1896. His 1897 model had a padded seat, leather roof gas lamps, and BF Goodrich tires, and was powered by a 2-cylinder, 10-horsepower motor, and was capable of 33 miles an hour. Wanting to prove his auto's durability as well as drumming up interest from investors, he undertook the first reliability run in American auto history, an 800-mile trek from Cleveland to New York City, taking just 9 days. He repeated it again in 1899, shaving off more than 4 days and over 30 hours of drive time. And as he was sponsored by the newspaper Plain Dealer and accompanied by reporter Charles Shanks, it not only stimulated interest in the cars, but Shanks's articles established the French term automobile in the American mindset. In 1901, and once again sponsored by the paper and with Shanks along, Winton attempted to become the first to drive across country, but only 11 days after leaving San Francisco, they became hopelessly stuck in the Nevada desert and abandoned the attempt. He sold his first car on March 24, 1898 for about $1,000 to Mr. Robert Allison, a mechanical engineer from Pennsylvania, who saw an ad in Scientific American. This is considered one of the very first sales of a domestic gas-powered vehicle in the U.S., and shockingly, their profit was $400 on each they sold. They sold 22 cars that year. Another early customer was James Packard. As I've spoken about in my Packard video, James was disappointed with the quality of his Winton and offered suggestions on how to improve it. Winton became annoyed, and in a situation similar to the later Ferrari and Lamborghini spat, he responded that if Packard thought he could do better, to build his own car. Insulted, Packard was founded in 1899, and adding insult to injury, he won away one of Winton's investors and his plant superintendent. Also in 1898, Henry Ford was recommended to Winton as chief engineer for his company, but Winton was unimpressed with him and didn't approve the hire. Further, in 1898, Winton invented the first semi-truck as well as the first semi-hauler to deliver his cars to dealers, and was soon selling car haulers to other manufacturers. And for 1899, Winton ended up selling over 100 vehicles, making them the largest manufacturer of gas-powered automobiles in the United States. And the publicity from their Cleveland to New York trip raised production to 25 a week, and prices rose to around $2,000. He now offered a 2-seater car with a tiny 69-inch wheelbase with a 2-speed transmission, tiller, and a 3-gallon gas tank. Also in 1900, Winton was the first to use a steering wheel. He built a special racer to compete in international racing events and added a business wagon department. 1900 was a critical year for the auto industry as Winton and later Henry Ford became embroiled in a patent war. It's a complicated story we won't go into detail here, but George Selden had patented the road engine in 1895, although he'd filed for it in 1879. He sold the patent to William C. Whitney in 1899, who began both aggressively pursuing royalties from manufacturers, starting with the successfully selling Winton, and after fighting at first, Winton caved in and later 26 other manufacturers did as well. But in 1903, Whitney came for Ford, who continued to fight. It took 8 years in the courts to be decided with a Selden victory, the judge writing that the patent covered any automobile propelled by gasoline vapor. But Ford filed an appeal, and in 1911 it was decided the Selden patent only covered autos using a Brayton cycle engine, but not the then commonly used Otto cycle. By 1901, members of the Vanderbilt family had purchased Winton's, further raising awareness of the company. Around this time, Winton built a factory on Cleveland's west side, and by 1903, the company employed 1,200 workers and had sales branches in New York, Chicago, Boston, and Philadelphia, and his cars were considered the most reliable in the world. Part of that reliability was based on their new batteries. Winton challenged one of his staff, a Mr. P.P. Nungesser, to build a better battery, and Winton recommended copper wire gauze instead of carbon cups to be used. The idea was so successful that Nungesser started his own battery company. On October 11, 1901, Winton and Ford themselves raced against each other in a hugely anticipated event. While Winton was the better driver and he surged ahead early, his car began smoking and losing power, allowing Ford to pull ahead. Afterwards, Ford said, "Put that man in my car and he could beat anyone." Once again, there's echoes of history as Winton vowed to beat Ford. In response, he created the 1902 Winton Bullet, which set a speed record that year, but he was once again defeated by a Ford. In 1903, Dr. Horatio Nelson Jackson made a $50 bet that he could drive across the country. After getting permission from his wealthy wife, he made the first successful auto drive across the U.S., taking just 64 days. Those early 1900 cars were all four-cylinder, and in 1905, Winton had four models priced up to a staggering $4,600, or about $164,000 in 2024 money. In 1907, Winton sold 1,100 cars, introducing the first six-cylinder car, and by 1910, the company offered 18 different models. By 1915, produced 2,450 vehicles. Through the 1910s, Winton continued to focus on expensive, hand-built cars for the wealthy, and by 1911 claimed to have solved reliability problems with six cylinders, and their lineup was six-cylinder only. But as the 1920s dawned, Winton was being undercut or out-innovated by other manufacturers like Ford, who were mass-producing affordable cars. In addition, their styling remained stubbornly conservative, and in 1922, Winton made only 690 cars. And in February 1924, the company shut down. But the story wasn't to end there. Back in 1912, Winton founded Winton Gas Engine and Manufacturing Company to produce marine engines based first on gas engines of Winton designs and later diesel engines based on European designs, and producing the first American diesel engine in 1913. Renamed in 1916 as Winton Engine Works, they then focused on marine and locomotive diesel engines. Through the 20s, Winton became the primary supplier for rail cars, but he stepped down as president in 1928, and in 1930 the company was sold to GM and renamed the Cleveland Diesel Engine Division in 1938. During the 30s, lighter and faster diesels were developed, and in 1934, an 8-cylinder, 600-horsepower engine powered the first American diesel-powered train, the Burlington Zephyr. By 1939, 98% of the company's business was government work, and by 1941, they expanded their plant and employed 5,000 people, producing engines for an estimated 70% of the Navy subs during World War II, as well as escorts and backup generators. After the war, employment plummeted to 1,000 in 1947. With the shift to atomic power in subs in the 50s, demand for diesels decreased, and GM closed the Cleveland plant in 1962 and merged it with their electromotive division. Winton isn't a famous name that I think most people have ever heard of. Not like Packard or Pierce Arrow, but at the time, they were a prestigious competitor for those other brands and competed for those wealthy auto buyers. But listening to the story and reading about this, he had an outsized influence on the development of the automobile, whether it was the semi-hauler, batteries, six-cylinder engines, reliability, endurance runs, racing, the steering wheel, the list goes on and on. But because of their short life, it appears they've been largely forgotten, and I think we need to remember this amazing engineer and the company he helped build. While they may be forgotten, Their legacy lasted over 60 years, and it still echoes through history, however softly. Thanks for watching, and special thanks to my Patreons. Without their support, videos like this wouldn't be possible. And if you support histories like this and news opinions, please show this video some love with a thumbs up. I appreciate y'all being here. Thanks.